And we are really very happy to welcome your colleague Fabian Lenz, as well as Teckentrup and Alexander Lang on stage for a panel discussion. Fabian Lenz is Head of Innovation and Product Development at GOLDBECK. Teckentrup is the CEO of Teckentrup. And Alexander Lang is Head of Climate Neutral City and Smart City of Urban Development at Landeshauptstadt München. Welcome everyone, and thank you for taking time for us. Hello.
Hi.
Hi everyone.
Cool. Following up on your CEO's keynote, Fabian Lenz, which is, in your personal and professional opinion, the most pressing sustainability challenge in the construction sector?
Oh, the most pressing one there, because there are so many. I think to summarize our biggest challenge, it is to manage the overall complexity when it comes to sustainability for a whole building. You know, there are so many different options where you can improve sustainability. You have all the different building materials, several building components, you have all technical building equipment, you have energy production and consumption and other factors which are non-carbon related, for example, like land sealing or biodiversity. And like Jan-Hendrik Goldbeck already said, to make it as honest as possible, the benchmark must always be the full building life cycle from cradle to cradle. To only take the carbon footprint at the time when the building is being commissioned is just not right, it's not honest. So you need to take a look into all processes from raw material production to deconstruction, reusage, and recycling as well. And this is already super complex, and you have so many different options to choose from to make a building more sustainable. But in the end, you cannot forget, you must not forget that your building also needs to still be economically competitive so that it stays in demand on the market. A product can be super sustainable, but it will be absolutely useless if you do not sell it even once. So with all the different possibilities on the table, you need to find the options where you have the highest sustainability impact compared to the additional money you have to spend. And this is the only way you create the highest sustainability value. And yeah, with all the different options.
Agreed. Teckentrup, what sustainability requirements do you perceive in the market?
Well, to be a bit provocative, if you ask our customers, none. Or, well, joking aside, looking at the issue from a more analytic point of view, at the moment, our customers do understand that sustainability will be an important part in the future, but they don't perceive a demand in the market at the moment. For example, we produce doors with high insulation values that would save energy costs, or equip doors with sensors, but those are not demanded in the market. In other words, price eats sustainability at the moment. If you take a different perspective on the question, we at Teckentrup use a lot of agile methods to validate new ideas with our customers, ideas that are away from what is in the market today, very much like when Apple introduced their first iPhone. We then prioritize those demands for our future projects, and taking that perspective, the highest priority of our customers is to make what they do today better and easier. But you might ask yourself, why does that have anything to do with sustainability? It's a known fact, and Jan-Hendrik has shown that in his presentation too, that a lot of waste is produced by making mistakes in the whole process. And that is due to that complex connection of architects, planners, specifiers, installers, producers, and everybody not talking digitally to each other and creating errors. That's why we concentrate as a first step on the digitalization of the customer journey in order to reduce that cost. And within our company, we can value that worth in millions of euros already. And we're not as big as the other companies here, so it's quite important for us. Secondly, if you look at the decarbonization of our economies, the next step, of course, for us will be to look at the products ourselves. I mean, products that we produce, steel doors, consist of materials like steel, mineral wool, gypsum. They're all products that are not sustainable. So we have to look into looking at alternatives. Why is this only a second? Because it takes a long, long time to get those products into the market. and to get them ready for GOLDBECK to build into buildings, for example, because we have to test those products according to norms, and we expect roughly 5 years at least to take a product into the market.
Thanks. Alexander Lang, coming from the public sector, you're probably closest to the so-called end consumers. What is your take on the sustainable transformation of the construction sector?
Oh, thank you. As we understand, as I'm a planner in this topic, we understand the public sector as a field of public service, and more today as a digital public service, which meant we are on a change. We know this about a lot of cooperation with other cities in Europe. That is the main challenge on transformation. But sustainability is in a long term for us since 1998 a process. So it's a long way to come to the goals. As we say, our achievement is to be a city in balance. If I could explain in a concrete example, the subsidized housing is one of my topics I have also to address. So you need a limited rental, which is necessary in a city, which very high rent in Munich, as well a high quality in barrier-free homes, in ecological high standards. We have our new standards in Munich, which are very near way to climate neutral houses. And you have a limited funding as well from the federal state. So you have in a cross between the achievements you have to become in ecological aspects. We want to be a climate neutral city in 2035. And as in these things, the way towards a city in balance is very long. You must realize that not more than 1 to 2% of the buildings in the city were changed, rebuilt, refurbished, new built in 1 year. So after 12 months, you have still 98% of you have in beginning of the year. So there's a very, very long change to become sustainable. And on the other side, the transformation is to be, as all the other ones said, to be much more faster. So our goal is we need not 1 to 2% of change of the buildings in the cities. We have to go up to a rate of 4% each year. And if everyone who is working on the field of construction knows what a big amount of houses is meant in the city of Munich if you change 4% of all buildings in a year. So there's a big transformation. We have to change our planning processes, as well as have to change the process in our companies. The city of Munich owns by their companies about 60,000 apartments in Munich. So it's a goal for ourselves in changing a lot of these things and becoming more sustainable.
Thank you to all of you for your interesting first insights. During our program's preparation, when we talk to our corporate partners and industry experts, as well as to our talents during the application process, we noticed a clear consensus regarding sustainability. A consensus that I also witnessed here on stage. We need sustainable transformation now to protect our ecological, social, and economic environment. But we lack innovative solutions to turn our intention into impact. Kai Teckentrup, what is so special and at the same time so challenging about sustainability in the construction sector?
Well, like I mentioned before, one of the main points is price eats sustainability. So if, as a producer, I can sell products which are sustainable because they're more expensive, that is difficult. If the city capital, the state capital Munich doesn't publicly tender for environmental buildings, for example, there's no regulation need to build those, also to sell those products. The second point is regulations take so long to develop, or make development of products take so long. That is another issue. I can't just develop a new product today and tomorrow it will be available. It takes years to do that. The third thing is the complexity of the whole process. And something we see everywhere is that each player in the market develops insular solutions which do not work together. And that is generally a lack of digitalization, but also of the way we work together. If you, for example, know that 2% of the German architects only work with BIM systems to plan a building, and it's only the bigger buildings, not the majority of the buildings which are being built. And parts of our customers only using what we offer to minimize waste, for example, it's a good sign to see that digitalization hasn't really appeared in the building process. And that's because of that complex chain which we see. And another point, of course, is also that producers don't work together. In a lot of times it makes sense to form collaborations because maybe it does not pay off for yourself when you invent a new product or use new types. It's something you have to do together. To collaborate with others is important. The most important bit of all, I think, is to include the customer into the process, because he, in the end, decides what product he buys. For him, it's difficult to understand what product is sustainable and what isn't. If you go to GOLDBECK and order a building, you're not discussing about the sustainability aspects of every part of the building. So how do you make this easier for the customer to understand what is sustainable, and also what does he want to afford?
The entire industry agrees that it must become more sustainable. And a few steps already have been taken into the right direction. Fabian Lenz, how has the construction sector changed already? What were the major developments during the last 10 years?
Oh yeah, last 10 years is a long time span. I think that the industry has started to question itself more and more and has developed a strong urge to improve, especially when it comes to productivity, looking at the last 10 years. I think this self-reflection has launched many promising topics like industrialization, prefabrication, also moving away from batch size 1 buildings. And of course, it launched digitization based on BIM, building information modeling. And all these topics are still ongoing. Like Teckentrup just said, only 2% of the architects in Germany use BIM, even though it's absolutely logical to use it, to collaborate better, to have stronger processes over the whole building value chain. And so all these topics are still ongoing, and they will continue to accompany us for years to come. But I think the start in the recent years has already been promising and gives the industry at least a very good platform to launch new development and ideas, and also launch new developments around sustainability.
Compared to other sectors, respectively services in your portfolio, Alexander Lenz, how far or far behind is the construction industry regarding sustainability in your view?
Oh, okay. Hard question, because I do not want to address special companies, but as we realize, a lot of aspects of sustainability are far from the construction sector. As what said about BIM, and we ourselves are now made an implementation about digital processes, which need solutions like BIM and others. And it's not very easy also for the public sector to install all those solutions. But on the other side, we need partners which use also those solutions. So it's a collaborative access we need to come together between planning, consumers, and the companies which produce those houses or make refurbishment. But what we need is innovations in the construction materials, which was also mentioned in the first improvement, which about wood, timber in construction. As we talk about is what do we do with other new materials? How do we decide, is this good for our carbon footprint as a city? As we are thinking about those all value chains, we have to assign not only at the borders of the city, because outside, which is coming in our system of the city of Munich, we need circular economy approaches. A lot of the materials used in the last 100 years have to be reused if we want to have an acceptable carbon footprint, beginning by steel and all the other stuff we have in our buildings. So on the other way, as mentioned, was the part of consumers. The consumers are very, very different in their aspects, what they need and what they want to, by social groups, by income. There are different sustainability goals for those different groups, which are more on the social, more on the economic, more on the ecological path. So in the city of Munich, as we do as a department, we have to address those different kind of groups, integrate them in the process, and which is a very complicated political process to become more sustainable. And on the construction side, we have a lot to do. It's in respect to all those partners here in the round, it's a very, very old industry in the average, and the approach is to become like the modern industries. Automotive is, in cases of automation, digitalization, and all those aspects, far in front, and this is the challenge to achieve in construction.
Working in circular economy in Switzerland before, I just can agree with you. In the last 5 years, the number of startups in the construction sector has increased by the factor of 7. Especially software and new material solutions are booming. Fabian Lenz, from where can we expect major, hopefully positive change?
Yeah, I'm very, very happy that startups increasingly embrace the construction industry in the recent years. I think we have seen lots of good solutions starting to develop around real estate management and the PropTech scene. I think it was like 5 to 7 years ago. And luckily, this also fueled a shift of focus onto construction technology over the last, I think, 3 to 5 years. And within that, I particularly like the fact that startups also dare to tackle the really difficult topic of material science. Like you've just said, we have also seen lots of young entrepreneurs going for software solutions and digital platform concepts, and thus wanting to become the next digital unicorn. And don't get me wrong, this is also very, very good. I like that as well. However, in the construction sector, sustainability depends very much on physical materials and goods, which cannot be programmed away through digitization, like concrete, steel, wood, insulation. A building cannot function without building materials, and you have to get off your desk, off your computer to optimize the sustainability for building materials. And from my point of view, this is much more difficult, but the result can be much more rewarding, especially for sustainability. And I'm very, very pleased that more and more young entrepreneurs lead the charge in developing new material solutions.
Cool. In terms of timing, we have to speed up a little bit. So I would like to ask you just to minimize the questions really to the key points. But now, Kai Teckentrup, how does the political framework and namely regulations influence both established companies and startups in the construction sector?
Well, thank you, giving me a complicated product in 1 minute to answer.
You have to have a challenge, right?
Yeah, right. So backlinks very short and easy, maybe. In the European building sector, there's one regulation called European Construct Product Regulation, very difficult. And that defines all the requirements of products in the building sector and the market. It was done by 26 member states of the European Union, and the negotiations took longer than 20 years. So if you know that, you can imagine that it is very difficult to change those norms, and B, they're outdated. They don't embody sustainability because they're 20 years old. You can change them, of course. To give you a practical example, we produce exterior doors in buildings, and those need to, according to the norms, be equipped as a complete set, which is very unpractical because in real life, the accessories get put on the door on site, which for practical reasons, you get damages, they're expensive, and all these things. So what do? We have to deliver them completely, but the customer wants to add something later on. So we deliver a minimum part of the door, which means in practicality, people throw away things that we equip and that we have to equip according to the norms. So the regulations stop us sometimes from being sustainable, and they can't be easily changed. And this is just the European regulation on products. If you look on the buildings, that is decided nationally, which means every country in Europe decides their own requirements for building. In Germany, every state can set their own requirements. So this jungle of regulations leads us also to a lack of standardization. We cannot build one product which is good for all markets because we have to always understand the local needs, which leads to smaller productions, more waste, and all these problems that occur out of non-standardization. That was very quick, I hope.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And maybe the new government is listening to our live event and has an ear for us. Alexander Lang, what role does innovation play in the sustainable transformation in your view?
In our view, we have some very expressive challenges we are facing as a city. We have demographic changes, which meant some less employees in the construction sector, which meant how many buildings could be refurbished, new build. We have more complexity, as shown in the last sentences, Mr. Teckentrup, which means more knowledge on every side of the process, from the planners, architects, as well industry and the consumers, which is not in every field enough. More standards, as we see. If we want to challenge, we need standards as well in refurbishment as well as in new buildings, and standards which are common for a lot of cities, a lot of areas. Automation, as I said, we need more processes which go to more standardized and automatic produced parts, because of the cost efficiency question. At the same time, we use reuse of materials. It's always the same topics. If you come from industry or planners, the topics are the same. We have to address, and in all these fields, we need a much more innovation. We do in some projects, and we're also facing those regulations on the federal level as well as on the national and the European level, which do not accept to use some of the materials in a new house, or only in a very small part of the. So what we also see is innovation in also digitalization. As a planner, we reduced 80% of our time using digital energy use plans besides traditional ways. So we can enforce more those planning aspects because we do not lose time by collecting data and other stuff. So innovation is needed also on the software part. BIM was addressed, and as well as on the material side.
Interesting, thank you. With the construction sector, we are targeting one of the biggest, most complex sectors of our economy, and working alone in a silo will not be enough to create a real sustainable impact. On the contrary, we must engage in cross-value chain, cross-hierarchy, and even cross-sector collaborations. Fabian Lenz, how do you work together within and outside the construction industry?
Okay, yeah. Sustainable solutions, like my two panel colleagues already mentioned, must be developed through the entire value and supply chain. Take us, for example, in the end, we are a building material OEM. We receive building materials from our suppliers and build components and buildings based on them. And we are dependent on what they can deliver, and they need to make sure we can also really use what they develop. So co-development and co-creation is very important. Also, asking your customer and implementing your customer within the development process. And so I think we need to launch like cross-company development networks with big companies, startups, and our clients working side by side. The challenge we have to face is so great that it cannot be solved by one company alone, and we need to be more courageous together. But I think looking at this program, the mission construction, I think we are on a pretty good way, and I see strong partners heading the right direction together.
Cool. Alexander Lang, being rather downstream in the value chain, are you dependent on other players to change, or can you drive change independently?
No, nobody can go independent, as well as city couldn't. We have a lot of collaboration with other cities because we change our knowledge. We have a lot of collaboration with companies, mainly in my profession with the housing companies, of their needs and possibilities. I couldn't plan anything without knowing about their possibilities, about their needs and the consumers they have. As well, on the other side, as I said, we want to be climate neutral in 2035. So we have a very small time slot for innovative solution. So we also tried co-creative processes, and I think this mission we are talking today about is one possibility to collaborate, to find new solutions, to see what startups are looking forward with their new ideas we could integrate in our processes. So it's a collaboration about cities, about consumers, and so also with the industry. I couldn't plan anything if I do not know what they will be producing in the next 3 to 5 years and what their challenges in the next years to go integrated in our processes. So collaboration is very needed, and we do not do independent.
So in a nutshell, collaboration and communication is key.
Yes.
Kai Teckentrup, what is your take on collaborations along the value chain and across sectors?
Like my predecessor said, we see two things, and I feel the same thing whatever you say. One is we want to make a quick impact, and the other one is we need to collaborate. So if you take that quick impact thing, the first bit is always what we do is what can we do ourselves, which is completely in our range of actions, and that's already partnerships with institutes. Like whenever we design new buildings, we talk to universities, to the Fraunhofer Institute, for example, to create new energy reduction ideas, for example. The second bit is what can we do to make the whole process easy. Again, that's really a cooperation, because if you look at the digitalization of the customer journey, that's already integrating different players. And the third bit is whenever we look for different materials, that of course becomes more and more collaborative, because I don't have the expertise as a steel producer to know everything in the world about new products, new tests, and so on. So that dooms me to collaborate anyway. Our biggest problem, however, in that whole process is finding partners that are not just willing to, but have the capacity to do it. And by capacity, I don't mean have the resources to do it, but have the mindset to do it. For us, we discover agile methods are as one of the key factors to really get quickly to a point of view which is interesting for the customer. And we see a lot of collaborations, or we failed with a lot of collaborations, where we have partners that don't ideate, that don't iterate, that don't prototype, and that takes us to very long development periods and failures in projects. So that's very important from my point of view to make those projects a success.
Thank you for your detailed answers. Indeed, collaboration is one of the crucial factors for successful transformation. And with the mission, we designed a program that maximizes multi-leveled collaborations to bring forth innovative solutions. Herr Teckentrup, your company's ambition is to always find the best solution in terms of design, safety, and service. Where do your ideas and skills come from?
Well, 5 years ago, we developed products like a lot of old companies after the motto, I think this is good for you. And then we implemented it in the market, and most of the times we were wrong, sometimes we were right. We changed that process, introducing agile methods within the whole company. And we started with the places the customer felt first. That is product management, defining the demand of the customer, of course. And then we implemented design thinking, Scrum, and other agile methods to do that. And the second part was all the digital touch points we have with the customers today, because that's the biggest impact quickly. We then bit by bit introduced those methods in other parts of the company. So in contrast to other companies in the market, we have an approach to change the whole company. It's not just a startup we buy or we have on a playground somewhere and then try to integrate those ideas. We are trying to change the whole company. And that makes us really an exception in the construction business so far. And if you look back to answer your question, where do our ideas come from now? It is, of course, mainly from our customers themselves with those methods that we implement. It's coming from all over the company now, not just R&D, and it comes from collaborations with other companies.
Interesting. It is significant that collaboration comes up whenever we talk about the sustainable transformation, not only for the construction sector, but for all our programs. Fabian Lenz, what do you expect from other companies, collaborators and competitors to do regarding sustainability?
Yeah, okay. I think we have heard lots of statements today about collaboration between suppliers and companies, between companies and their customers, and even between competitors. And I could add up on that and say, I'd like to share more know-how and I'd like to do co-collaboration and so on and so on. Because we've heard a lot of this, I would quickly like to rephrase the question and tell you some of my expectations for the politics.
Sure.
Because with all our motivation to develop good solutions, we also need a clear rule set for getting quick wins, but also for having the ability to plan on a long-term view. For example, if you take the sudden stop of the BEG funding, which just came from one day to another, or another example that it's much more difficult to use recycled concrete in Germany than it is in other European countries. We need the rule set from the politics that we can also make long-term decisions regarding on what we're developing, how we're collaborating, and how we are moving forward. And I would like to see from our new politicians a much more and clear rule set on which we can take as a way to work around.
Thank you. And now the last question. And what values are you, Alexander Lang, looking for in a collaboration partner? What should our 6.6 team prepare for?
Okay. As I heard first of this question, I would think collaboration needs a protected structure. And what I mean is you need a regulation about the results of an innovation process, for example, or a long-term cooperation, because you have to trust in each other. You need common goals between the partners of the collaboration to look forward to a certain solution. You need opportunities of implementation of those solutions. I focus out of the vision of a city on this process. We had innovation contest in Munich, which offers to startups the chance to implement their solutions on our field, to test it. It's a part of this collaboration process, and at least we can ignore that a fair participation of the economic success is a part of good collaboration. I think it's very necessary that the chances to collaborate are better if you have a clear view on what will happen with the economic success. And if you have decided about this and have a clear regulation on this, it's a very good base for collaboration.
Thank you. And speaking of our program, we would like to now give our teams the opportunity to present their solution to push sustainability in the construction sector. Thank you again, Fabian Lenz, Kai Teckentrup and Alexander Lang, for your time, and we are looking forward to working with you.